Yeah, no, it's good. It's good.
Okay.
Henry,
Henry, but Henry?
who else is going to assist Mr. Ngozo?
Mr. Ngozo, I think, did you not receive any list there?
I did receive a list. So everyone else in that list, I must make a co-host.
Yeah, I think rather make them hosts, because then they sit at individual desks, so then they
Sure.
can. It's better that way.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
So if one of them go down, the other one can take over.
Yeah, Henry, I can tell you, my friend, you are going to need a backup person because the network is very unpredictable between yesterday and today. So, and yesterday we had a challenge with Treasury. Treasury was also sharing their own slide, and then it just kicked them out. We had to battle with that throughout the whole meeting. Yeah, you are muted. You are muted. Please unmute yourself, Mr. Henry.
Oh, sorry. No. I was saying yesterday we had a problem. There was a problem actually, with WhatsApp and Wi-Fi and all these things, and so it's not uncommon that I hear you guys were struggling. But hopefully by today, it'll be better.
Recording in progress.
Chairperson,
Good morning, Mr. Nodada.
how are you, Chair?
Do we have enough meeting to start our meeting in 4 minutes time?
Yes, Chairperson, we have enough members now. For now, you can start the meeting exactly at 10 o'clock.
No problem. Thank you, Mr. Nodada.
Thank you, Chair.
Morning, Honorable Chair Lady, Ms. Mundada. Morning, all colleagues.
Morning, colleagues on the platform. Good morning.
Morning, Chairperson. Morning, honorable members.
Colleagues, let me just make you aware that this meeting will be recorded live in all the media platforms. So I'm going to request that all members that will be making inputs, that will be making submissions or speaking, I request that you turn on your videos when making a submission. Unless if you inform us on time that you are having a problem similar to the one we had yesterday of network, just switch on your video, let us know, and then switch it off. Thank you very much, colleagues. A very good morning to you all the colleagues on the platform. It's exactly 10 o'clock and we are ready to can start our meeting. Mr. Nodada, I am going to request that you flag the agenda of this meeting on the screens for members to see. As the agenda is put before us, colleagues, and we got the agenda circulated to up. Honorable Numalo, I am going to request that you mute your microphone. I'm sorry for that, colleagues, but as the agenda is before all of us, I would like for members to go through it and indicate whether we agree that this is the manner in which we will be conducting our meeting. If there's any addition that members would like to put on the agenda, they will also indicate by show of hands, and I will note members. Is the agenda for this meeting in order, honorable members?
Agreed, Honorable Chair.
Thank you very much, Honorable Brett. Let me officially open the meeting, and good morning and a welcome and a warm welcome to all the esteemed members of the FFC, distinguished committee members, the support staff, and all the invitees in this meeting. Colleagues, yesterday we had a comprehensive briefing by the National Treasury on the crucial Appropriation Bill of 2024, marking this initial phase of our process. Today's session is dedicated to engaging in a consultative meeting with FFC to gather their invaluable inputs and insight of the Appropriation Bill 2024. This meeting is very important and essential as it will be laying a foundation of a series of forthcoming public hearings with the civil society organizations. Essentially, colleagues, the FFC serves as a constitutional body tasked with providing recommendations to both Parliament through this committee and provincial legislature on key matters such as revenue allocations, matters such as equitable share, government guarantees, municipal fiscal powers and functions, amongst others. We are going to commence with these proceedings, colleagues, and I'm going to kindly request the chairperson, without wasting any time of the FFC, to introduce her esteemed team to the committee. And once the introductions are complete, I am going to request that Mr. Nodada introduces the members of the portfolio committee and of the select committee, and likewise, I'm going to request that when the roll call is done, members should switch on their videos for us to be familiar with their faces. And immediately after the introductions, I'll be handing over to the chairperson of the FFC to start giving us a presentation. Thank you very much once again, colleagues, for your presence and commitment in fulfilling the shared responsibilities given to each and every one of us. Thank you very much, and over to you, chairperson of the FFC.
Good morning,
Chairperson.
Chairperson. Good morning,
Mr.
Chairperson.
Nodada, I'm sorry for the chairperson. Mr. Nodada, may I kindly request that the FFC be introduced first and then you introduce members later, because I'm afraid they will get into matters before we get to know each other, as it happened yesterday with members from the National Treasury. Let's allow the FFC to introduce members, and then you will introduce members of the select committee. Then we'll give them a chance again to start with their opening remarks and give us the presentation. Thank you very much. Over to you, Chairperson.
Good morning, Chair. My name is Thando Ngozo, and I'm not the chairperson of the FFC, but I'm a research manager at the FFC. The chairperson, unfortunately, is unable to join us for this important engagement because she is bereaved. So we just want to extend the apology on her behalf so that you can note that. Otherwise, as I've already said, my name is Thando Ngozo, and I'm a research manager here at the FFC, and I'm accompanied by Sasha Peters, who's also a research manager at the FFC, together with Kuto Mukau, who's also a researcher at the FFC. So that's the team that's going to be taking you through the presentation for today. Maybe let me pause there then and allow the introduction of the members. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Mr. Ngozo. Let me start with the introduction. My name is Ms. Lehwase, a permanent delegate of the NCOP, an elected chairperson of this committee. I'm a permanent delegate from the Northwest. Mr. Nodada, over to you.
Thank you, Chairperson. Chair, present in the meeting is Honorable Numalo.
Good morning, Honorable Chairperson and the whole committee. My name is Sylvia Ngumalo, delegate from Puma.
We also have Honorable Siwe Sachan.
Greetings, everyone. Honorable Siwe from the EFF.
Honorable Brits is in the meeting, Chair.
Good morning, Honorable Chair and Honorable members. I'm Henny Brits, and I'm a permanent delegate from the Eastern Cape.
Honorable Majola is also present in the meeting, Chairperson.
Good morning, Chairperson. Good morning, members of the FCC. I'm Mr. Majola, the permanent delegate from KwaZulu-Natal. Thank you.
Honorable Ndlovu is also present in the meeting, Chair.
Good morning, Chair, and to the members in the platform. My name is Honorable Sani Ndlovu, permanent delegate from Limpopo. Thanks very much.
Mr. Nodada. Colleagues, is there any member on the platform that has not yet been introduced? I'm going to request that you open your mic and introduce yourself.
Don't forget about me, Paul Swart, permanent delegate from the Western Cape. Good morning.
It's happening again, Mr. Swart. Good morning, and we apologize for that.
Thank you.
Without any waste of time, colleagues, and to give space for deliberations and questions and clarity-seeking questions later after the presentation, I'll hand over straight to Mr. Gozo to start giving us the presentation. Thank you very much.
Chairperson.
Over to you, Gozo.
Apologies, Chairperson, if I may interrupt. This is Estelle Grunewald, your second committee secretary.
Thank you, Ms. Grunewald, and welcome to the meeting.
Thank you, ma'am. Sorry, it seems that Lubabalo is frozen. I just wanted to mention the apologies that we have received for this meeting. While Lubabalo is now not on his screen, but we have received a letter of apology from Mr. Honorable Khadebe, who could not attend, and then we have also received from the FFC, from the chairperson, the apology, the letter from her office because of her bereavement. So I just wanted the committee to note that. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Over to you, Mr. Gozo.
Thank you, Chair. If you can just confirm if you are able to see the presentation.
Yes, we did, and we can clearly see the presentation before us.
Thank you so much. So we are making this presentation as a submission to on the appropriation bill for the 2024-25 financial year. The chair has already talked about all that is on this slide, so I will skip this slide because you've already covered it, Chair. So I'll go straight to the first part of the presentation. And okay, maybe before that, let me just talk to the presentation outline. So I'm going to be talking to you about the 2024 fiscal framework, and then my colleague Sasha will come in and talk to you about the 2024 appropriation bill and the 2023-24 second adjustment appropriation bill, and then my colleague again Kuzo will tackle the concluding remarks and recommendation, as well as upcoming annual submission for the Division of Revenue 2025-26. So in this slide, honorable members, we are presenting an overview of the 2024 fiscal framework, and the table that you see on this slide presents a summary of the fiscal framework over the MTF period. What is worth noting from this table is that while the budget deficit for 2023-24 has been revised upwards to 4.9% of GDP from the previous estimate of 4% in the 2023 budget, it is projected to narrow down from 4.5% in 24-25 to 3.3% of GDP by 2026-27. With regards to the revenue projection, we see that revenue projections for 2023-24 are 46.5 billion lower than the 2023 budget estimates. What is also worth noting is that the 2024 budget projects the main revenue to be at 1.8 trillion for the 2024-25 fiscal year, which is 53.1 billion less than the projected, than what is projected in the 2023 budget. We then note that the significant shortfalls in revenue over the MTF reflect weak economic conditions and lower consumer demand, leading to declines in corporate tax and value-added tax, which is what explains the shortfall in the revenue. When we come now to the expenditure side, we see that non-interest expenditure has been revised downward by 6 billion for 2023-24 compared to the 2023 budget. And over the MTF period, consolidated non-interest expenditure is projected to contract at an average annual rate of 0.5% in real terms. On this slide, we're still continuing with the 2024 fiscal framework, and we note that the gross borrowing requirement will accelerate from 332 billion in 2024-25 to 424.7 billion in 2025-26, before declining to 279 billion in 2026-27. But what we want to bring to the attention of the honorable members, and what for us was the main highlight of the budget, is the fact that the government introduced the GFECRA settlement projected to reduce the borrowing requirement by 150 billion over the medium term. The Commission acknowledges that prudent use of GFECRA resources can reduce pressure on public finances and bond markets, thus signaling confidence to investors and financial markets. However, the Commission notes that while the GFECRA settlement improves debt outlook in the short run, it is seen as a short-term solution to what is a structural fiscal problem. It is against this backdrop that the Commission questions whether the cost and risk of using foreign exchange reserves justify the temporary relief to address structural fiscal deficits. The Commission, therefore, is of the view that to resolve South Africa's debt crisis, the focus should be on tackling underlying fiscal challenges and implementing structural reforms for greater efficiency and productivity. Drawing on reserves provides immediate fiscal relief, but it is critical to assess short-term returns against long-term risk to maintain investor confidence and avoid increased borrowing and debt distress. Now, when we turn then our focus to revenue trends and tax proposals, which is what is presented on this slide, we see that the graph on the slide shows tax revenue trends between 2021-22 and 2026 and 2027. What is apparent is that tax revenue for 2023-24 is projected at 1.73 trillion, which is 56.1 billion less than in the 2023 budget, as we've already alluded to earlier on. An average tax revenue of 1.99 trillion over the medium term is projected, indicating an increase of 45.6 billion relative to the 2023 medium-term budget policy statement. We also note that that instead of raising income tax rates, government decided not to adjust personal tax brackets, medical tax credits, and rebates for inflation. Now, that has some implication, and we are of the view that this will result in bracket creep, where taxpayers are pushed into higher tax brackets and taxed more due to inflation increasing their income. Consequently, the taxpayers' real purchasing power will either remain the same or deteriorate. When we move on then to this slide, which presents the SOE performance, the graph on this slide shows various measures of the performance of SOEs spanning the period 2013-14 to 2022-2023. What is worth noting, and what we want to bring to the attention of the honorable members, is that SOEs show weak financial performance, posing a significant risk to the fiscus. Secondly, SOEs require fiscal transfers to cover losses and to recapitalize their balance sheet. Thirdly, that most major SOEs experience declines in the value of their assets, adding to the fiscal risk. So, and then lastly, we just want to note that the return on equity for SOEs, which is a profitability measure, deteriorated from 1.7% in 2013-14 to minus 13.1% in 2020-21 on average. Chairperson, with your permission, may I invite my colleague Sasha to come in and present to you the second section of the presentation. Thank you.
Good morning.
Thank you, Mr. Ngozo.
Good morning, Chair, members of the committee and other colleagues. My name is Sasha Peters, and I'll take you through the next section, which basically provides a summary of the FFC's views on a selection of votes within the 2024 appropriation bill. If we can move to the next slide, please. As members know, this bill makes provision for the appropriation of funds from the National Revenue Fund for government's requirements in relation to the 2024-25 financial year. And starting from an aggregate point of view, the total appropriation by vote amounts to 1.1 trillion in 2024-25. And this is 4% higher than 2023-24. When we go into the votes and we start, sorry, the previous slide, Tanda, I'm still on that one. Going into the votes and we start with social development. At the national level, the social development vote is the largest vote at a total of 275 billion in 2024-25. The South African Social Security Agency, or SASSA, which administers and disburses all the social security grants, is located under this vote and is responsible for the bulk of allocations under this particular vote. Now, one of the central issues under this particular vote relates to the Social Relief of Distress, or SRD grant, which members will be aware this grant, the SRD grant, was established in May 2020 as a temporary measure to deal with the socioeconomic hardships caused by the pandemic. The grant has since then been extended numerous times. And Budget 2024 indicates that the grant will again be extended up until March 2025. And while the Commission supports the extension of the SRD grant, the issue that remains outstanding is that we have yet to get clarity on the development of a long-term and sustainable solution to replace the SRD grant, so that we stop dealing with it in a sort of ad hoc manner, where every time the budget or MTBPS comes around, we need to think about extending it. Then, Chair, the second largest vote within the appropriations bill is the cooperative governance vote. As you will see in the table, the fourth row in that table, the allocation to this vote is projected to grow by 7.3% in 2024-25. And this vote is where the local government equitable share allocation and some of the key local government conditional grants, such as your MIG, is located. Now, part of the overall thrust of the 2024 budget is the protection of funding for municipalities via the local government equitable share allocation. And the Commission welcomes this, as it implies protection of funding for the delivery of basic services to indigent households. And of course, the key here is to ensure that municipalities spend these funds efficiently and effectively, so that indigent households actually receive those basic services, such as your water, sanitation, refuse removal, and electricity. Looking at the higher education and training vote, we see an overall growth of 5% being projected for 2024-25. The Commission welcomes, more broadly within the sector, the Commission welcomes the launch in January this year of the comprehensive student funding model, which is aimed at catering for students falling in the missing middle. We do, however, caution against the decision to appoint the National Student Financial Aid Scheme, NSFAS, to administer that funding for the missing middle. And this is against the backdrop of the ongoing institutional challenges characterizing this institution. With respect to basic education, while we note the issues of poor quality that characterize basic education outputs, we'd like to hone in on ECD. As members will know, the ECD function was shifted from social development to basic education in 2022. And as stated in previous submissions, the Commission believes that investment in quality ECD is critical if we want to improve educational outcomes throughout the human capital pipeline. So in this context, we welcome the significant growth in the ECD conditional grant in 2024-25. The one aspect that we think does require clarity is the 1.1 billion rand reduction in that grants baseline. According to the budget, the 2024 budget review, this money was set aside to implement a results-based financing initiative and a nutrition pilot. However, this money has been shifted to the National Department of Basic Education to implement the initiatives on behalf of the provinces. So this sounds very much like an indirect grant. It needs to be clear whether we are likely to see the establishment of an indirect component in this particular grant. If it is that that this funding signifies the establishment of an indirect grant, where national government undertakes spending and implementation on behalf of subnational government, then, as we've recommended in the past, there should be clear timelines attached to the utilization of this type of grant, including the phasing out of the grant. I think perhaps just some background, the FFC has previously done some analysis on the use of indirect grants. And we found that in terms of performance, national departments are not always better at spending and implementation relative to the subnational counterparts. So we would advise that indirect grants be used as a measure of last resort, and that if that need for an indirect grant really exists, that as I said, we have clear timelines around its utilization. Then, regarding the health vote, the Commission reiterates its support for the principle of universal health coverage. Given the NHI policy developments in the sector, we would advise government from an intergovernmental fiscal relations perspective to ensure that the full implications for provinces are considered, and that strategies are put in place to support provinces in transitioning to the new system of public healthcare delivery. And we think that this is important given that the implementation of the NHI will affect not only the resource allocation to this sphere, but also the constitutionally allocated set of powers and functions that are assigned to provinces. Moving to the next slide, please. Tanda. So turning to the transport vote, thank you. Allocations to this vote are set to grow by 3.1% in 2024. Looking specifically at rail transport, the Commission welcomes the tabling of the freight logistics roadmap, the implementation of which will be overseen by the National Logistics Crisis Committee established by the President. And that roadmap has three priority areas. The first is operational and rolling stock improvements. The second relates to improving the security and safety of the rail network. And the third concerns the implementation of a capital investment program. And from the Commission's perspective, these focus areas are well placed to help alleviate the country's logistics challenges. But what we emphasize is that for substantive success, we need the National Logistics Crisis Committee to be front and center in terms of efficient and coordinated implementation. Then, together with transport, the water and sanitation vote is often one of the drivers when it comes to infrastructure spending. We see that again in this budget. In 2024-25, allocations to water and sanitation vote are set to increase by 12.6%. And while the Commission welcomes advances in access to water and sanitation services, it must be acknowledged that we need to place a specific focus on quality. And even when we look at the department's own blue and green drop reports, there are concerns around the state of water resources and systems, as well as wastewater treatment works. So against this backdrop, the Commission welcomes the announcement in the 2024 budget with regards to new funding mechanisms and the construction of bulk water projects aimed at improving water supply, especially in villages. We think that these focus areas are well aligned to addressing some of the issues related to our water resources and systems. Under the Mineral Resources and Energy vote, despite Cabinet-approved reductions, the Commission welcomes and supports the move towards modernizing the mining rights licensing system, as announced in the State of the Nation Address of 2024. We think it will help address one of the major hurdles constraining growth in the local mining industry. And to this end, funding to the Mining, Minerals and Energy Policy Development Program is supported, as it is likely to stimulate opportunities for marginalized groups to enter the mining sector in South Africa. Then with respect to funding of the Agriculture, Land Reform and Rural Development vote, we see that allocations to that vote are set to decline marginally by under 1% in 2024-25. We do also see reductions in funds for the Ilima Letsema conditional grant, and given the emphasis of that grant on food production, we are concerned about the projected reductions there. Moving to the next slide, please. The Commission believes that the role of the Departments of Trade, Industry and Competition, the Employment and Labour Department and the Small Business Development Departments, all these departments are critical to kickstarting growth in our economy. What we do mention here is that their mandates do appear to be overlapping. And when we did an assessment of the allocations to these votes and just the general growth profile attached to these three votes, it brings into question whether they are fit for purpose. So we do advise that consideration be given to better aligning the mandates of these departments so as to minimize duplication and costs as well. Then with respect to police and justice and constitutional development votes, we welcome the increases there. With respect to police, while we endorse the increase in human and financial resources, we would like to emphasize that these additional resources need to be used efficiently. And this comment is made in light of the growing crime rate in the country. Finally, with respect to the safety and security cluster, we note reductions for both the Office of the Chief Justice and the Home Affairs vote. And in respect of both votes, we are hoping that the efforts that were underway and that were aimed at modernizing and enhancing service delivery, such as the records digitization project with Home Affairs, that these types of projects will not be totally derailed as a result of the reductions. Chairperson, moving to the next slide, please. Chair, we do have one slide that summarizes our inputs on the second adjustment appropriation bill for 2023-24. The second adjustment appropriation bill aims to effect adjustments to the appropriation of money from the National Revenue Fund for the requirements of the state in respect of the 2023-24 financial year. And as members will see in that table, the total additions and reductions set forth in that bill both amount to 470 million. The largest allocation is in respect of the Represented Political Parties Fund, which is located under the Home Affairs vote. Then the FFC notes the reductions to the Community Works Program and the Expanded Public Works Program. And they were just, given the purpose of these two public employment programs, which is aimed at creating income security and work experience for participants, we do hope that these downward reductions were based on an evaluation of the performance of the two interventions. Then the Commission supports the 95 million addition to the votes within the safety and security cluster. And finally, what we'd like to note, Chair, is that across various votes, we see that additions were made to the administration program within a number of votes. Generally, the administration program in a vote is focused on the non-core or non-service delivery aspects within a department. So our advice there is that within the current strained fiscal environment, where cuts have had to be made to some of the key service delivery programs, that these types of additions be kept to a minimum. Chairperson, I'd like to now hand over to my colleague, Pitzer, to take you through the last section of the presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Peters.
Thank you, Sasha, and good morning, Honorable Chair and Honorable members. Can we move to the next slide, please? Thank you. Chair, the Commission really appreciates the considerations of its recommendations made in the past 30 years by Parliament, since we know that the Commission was actually also established in the year 1994, which really coincides with the year in which the country was led into democracy. So we really appreciate government for considering our recommendations. In the first government of national unity, the Commission uplifted the first budget to the government and public finance accountability report under the negotiated constitutional order. And after a prolonged recession that began in the year 1998, in the year 1993, we saw a turnaround in which South Africa saw some spurts of growth with 5 to 7% in seasonally adjusted and annualized growth rate in output measured from quarter to quarter. And during that time, the state revenue account recorded total revenues of approximately 89.2 billion, with expenditures reaching 114.7 billion. And as we sit here today, South Africa's main budget revenue exceeds 1.8 trillion. And on the other hand, expenditures amount to 2.1 trillion, which calculates to a deficit of 320.9 billion. And the question that many of us should be pondering on is whether these expansions in public finance have been matched by corresponding improvements, not only in the quantity, but also in the quality and the delivery of public goods and services. In terms of our recommendations, firstly, the Commission recommends a comprehensive economic growth strategy to overcome the obstacles and discover new prospects of growth. And we note that the strategy should reorient the industrial policy and align it with shifting global trends and requirements. And this should ignite an economically sustainable path by placing more emphasis on sectors that are increasingly in global demand, such as the production of grid-scale storage batteries for electricity and other green-related eco-products, and position the country as a prominent figure in the fast-growing green technology market. The Commission also recommends strengthening state-owned entities' governance structures by rigorously assessing their business models and rationalizing operations by divesting non-core activities. This should be coupled with speeding up and establishing a centralized holding company as recommended by the Commission in our 2024-25 annual submission. And we stress that this centralized entity would constitute a well-organized platform to comprehensively tackle obstacles of state-owned entities and to promote strategic decision-making and ensuring a unified efforts for operational and financial success. Next slide, please. The Commission also appreciates the efforts that have been made in terms of access to basic services since the year 1994. However, we note that there is a huge room for further improvement across a range of sectors. And for substantive change and transformation to occur, we feel that there's a need to complement the emphasis on quantity and access with a focus on inequality of such access. We would also like to reiterate our previous call for indirect grants to be used as a measure of last resort. And further to this, to ensure that the capacity of municipalities are being strengthened to conduct their own affairs, while national sector departments implementing the indirect grants must devise plans and timelines for building the capacity of the affected department or municipality to take on the implementation responsibility associated with an indirect grant. Key to this is the timelines for phasing out of indirect grants. And finally, a strong monitoring framework should also be devised for indirect grants to facilitate improved performance management. The Commission also welcomes the investigation and efforts at turning around the performance of NSFAS. However, we feel that, or we recommend that the national sector departments should strengthen proactive oversight over subnational governments and entities to ensure that early warning systems are developed to identify risks and implement appropriate mitigation strategies. With regards to freight logistics, the Commission welcomes the approval of the roadmap by Cabinet in December 2022, and we are of the view that the 3 areas of intervention outlined in the roadmap are key to alleviating the problems of the country's freight, rail, and port logistics systems. So the Commission recommends that the National Logistic Crisis Committee should ensure efficient and coordinated implementation of the road map with all stakeholders that are involved. In addition to this, the roadmap should be enacted in a coordinated manner with Transnet's own recovery plan to ensure alignment in the objectives and timelines of both interventions. Okay, next slide. Thank you. So, Honorable Chair and members, we all know that it's been 12 years since we adopted the National Development Plan as a policy document which detailed a set of overarching objectives that were set to be achieved by the year 2030. And we are now only 6 years to the year 2020, and many of the objectives that are set out in the NDP look very less likely to be achieved. For example, unemployment has risen to unprecedented levels, especially among the youth. And there are still high levels of poverty in the country and high levels of inequality. And our public finances really are not in the manner and the state in which they should be in, which continues to weigh on growth. So we feel that these are areas of the economy that the current government should deal with aggressively, firstly by eliminating wastage and rooting out corruption within the public service, and also strengthening political accountability through legislative oversight and real testing. But also key to this is providing or seeing value for money for the services that are being provided by the public service. Thank you. Next slide. Chair, many of the solutions to the problems that we have outlined so far are well researched and detailed in our annual submission on the Division of Revenue that was recently tabled in Parliament, and we will be presenting the submission to the committee in the near future. But the topics that are covered in the submission address issues that relate to the broader public sector productivity from national government down to provincial and local government. And also we touch on some problems or efficiency issues within state-owned entities. So we invite really honorable members to have a look at the submission, and we will be presenting the submission in the near future to the committee. Honorable Chair, this brings us to the end of our presentation. Would like to hand over back to you. Thank you so much, Chair.
Thank you very much, members from the FFC. That was a very informative presentation, and it's good that the presentation was sent to members before this committee. I am now going to recognize hands that would like to make submissions, hands that would like to add hands that would like to ask questions, but before handing over to the colleagues, maybe I might have missed it. I would like for you to provide an insight on how the proposed allocations in the bill may impact different sectors of the economy and address any potential disparities. That's one. Number two, I would seek an advice on ways that can the committee work collaboratively with your good selves to ensure that the appropriation bill reflects the national priorities and address key fiscal challenges. And the last one from myself would be that how does the current 2024 appropriation bill align with the recommendations provided by the FFC in terms of the revenue allocations and the fiscal issues? I am seeing the hands of Honorable Siweya and Honorable Swartz in that order, members. Honorable Siweya, Honorable Matapelo Siwisa. I'm sorry for that. And then Mr. Brett, you will be the last. Over to you, Ms. Siwisa.
No, thank you, Chairperson, and thanks for the presentation that was made. Chairperson, on slide 6, there's an abbreviation there that says GFECRA. There's government has introduced a GFECRA settlement. I need to understand what does that mean, number one. Number two, what are the terms and conditions for the settlement? Because according to the presentation, it says that borrowing requirements are going to accelerate 332 billion, 24 financial year 24-25, and then it will move from 332 billion to 424.7 billion in 25-26, and then it's going to decline at 279. And all of these things are based on the GFECRA settlement. What does the settlement actually entitle? Because we can't be told of, we are being given abbreviations of things. Some of us are new in this committee, in the Select Committee of Appropriations. So if there are abbreviations that are going to be used, can you please go into detail and explain what those abbreviations means and what are the terms and conditions for the settlement that they are speaking about? Because in everything that happens since the last time, even this term, and the issue of public-private partnership, it becomes a concern. That is why I want to know what are the terms and conditions for that. Number two, the issue of the state-owned entities and its independence has always been an issue, since we can remember that the SOEs could never work independently. Now, at this present moment, most of the SOEs were falling under public enterprise, and from this term, public enterprise has been done away. So if these SOEs were unable to be independent while they were falling under a certain department that was clearly having a mandate to say that you must ensure that the SOEs actually make a positive contribution towards the economic growth of South Africa, because SOEs play a very significant role when it comes to the economic growth of South Africa. So back then, they were working under a certain department. Right now, the department is gone. Now they'll have to fall under somebody. If there was not enough that could be done back then on their own, what promises do we have that the issues that have been shown, that have been presented here, that SOEs experienced a decline in the value of their assets, and they had a specific minister back then. Right now, they are going to fall somewhere else. So the issue of SOEs it's one of the issues that needs also to be looked into. And then when you go to slide, I think it's slide 10. And this is something that I said yesterday, Chair, and I'm going to say it now. If you are going to focus more on higher education and you focus less on basic education, it says to us that the government does not have any hope that the children that have started grade 1 are going to finish grade 12. So why should we spend more money? So we know eventually we are going to have less children at the end of the day. So let's not spend more money and then we look for those learners that are going to be able to come to grade 12. We know that education is very expensive. That is why we are pushing for free quality education. And the free quality education can only come if there's going to be economic growth. And if there's economic growth, it means that economic growth, we are going to need more employment. So you get to your health issue and then the universal health coverage for who? Because the poorest of the poor are going to be left outside. That's one. Funds could have been utilized. Those funds of pushing for the NHI and whatever, again, it takes you back to the public-private participation that President Ramaphosa was speaking about, because that money that is going to be put in for NHI is the same money that could have been utilized to make sure that we've got existing clinics. So whatever that can be said, sometimes I feel like numbers, we are only playing with numbers, but what do we actually want to achieve with all of these things that have been there? You go to your ECD, yes, ECD, money has been put into ECD. But again, the presenter says, poor educational outcomes bring into question the quality of basic education in South Africa. So you can pump in whatever money that you want to pump in, but if the quality of education does not actually accommodate climate or the South African environment, then it means that we are just going to pump in money that we don't know what is going to happen. The issue of agriculture, land and reform, I need to ask a question to say all of these farmers, small-scale farmers that are being funded with the Ilima grant, what happens to their products? Because what needs to happen is that they must be given an opportunity to also sell their products at Pick and Pay and Checkers and your big supermarkets that are out there. So you give them money and then you don't assist for their products to be sold at the bigger supermarkets. So you give them money and then what happens after that? The water and sanitation issue, Chair. Yesterday, the minister, when there was a debate in the House, she said that National is only responsible for dealing with the dams. We are not responsible for the supply of water to people. And now here we are being told about to address the issue of plant level infrastructure maintenance implementing. There's a part that says that improving the water supply. And the minister said that we are not responsible for supply. So which is which? Is the Department of Water Sanitation responsible for supplying water, or they are responsible for maintaining dams? So if you can get a clarity on that issue also, Chair. You get to the issue of Home Affairs. I'm going to finish now, Chair. The issue of Home Affairs and the introduction of this record digitization project 23-24. Already there is poor service by members of, or by staff members of Home Affairs. We all hear the stories, we get phone calls and everything. If they cannot work with people in front of them, and we want to implement this project, now it means that we are going to have a crisis when it comes to that. I think I'll pause there for now, Chair, and then maybe I'll have a bite after we got the response. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Honorable Siwisa. Honorable Swartz.
Thank you, Honorable Chair Lady. Thank you very much for this opportunity, and thank you very much for this brilliant presentation. I think it's very clear for a normal citizen sitting outside and listening to all the successes and all the challenges. Firstly, Chair Lady, for me as a newcomer in the NCOP, the future or the current situation after 30 years of democracy and the finance of our country, it doesn't look good for me. There is year after year, as I've watched the State of the Nation address and the address by the Finance Minister and all the plans that we will put together in betterment of the improving the lives of our people outside. And after 30 years now, I've listened this morning, we still sitting, we struggle to get out of this clay. All the recommendations and all the money throwing to all projects. But I think, Chair Lady, as I listened, during the past days to all the inputs in the plenaries, I think we as a government of unity now, I think we should really work together, because I always believe in what should have been done yesterday. There's still chance that we can get it right today and moving on forward. I just want to highlight 4 basic issues that I've took out of this presentation. I'm also worried. The previous speaker mentioned about the SOEs, and I've heard year after year that will be the last time that we will save a SOG, SOE. Last time that we will throw money. They need to come up and stand on their own feet. But now there's still recommendations. There's brilliant recommendations from this group, but I think we really need to, as government, we need to take this things very serious. I'm very worried about the first speaker, Mr. Tandu Kubele, Mr. Wasit Ngosu. He mentioned very clear that our debt situation in South Africa is at crisis. I think we are in a crisis with our debts. The other things that really worry me, the first one is on the police efficiency and the crime rates. While the FFC endorses the increased financial and human resources for the police department, concerns remain about its efficiency in combating rising crime rates. And my question is, what strategies could be implemented to improve the management and effectiveness of this department, given the public's dissatisfaction with past leadership? We must know that we are leaders serving the public. We're sitting in our offices, we are surrounded by securities and policemen, but we are servants of the public. And the public in 2024, the 29th May, they forced us out of the comfort zone in government, so that we need to install innovation. How can we become innovative in serving up our people better out there? So that is my first big concern, the strategies to put in place. The second one is the student funding model. Regarding the new comprehensive student funding model, how does the FFC propose addressing concerns about its viability in light of a shrinking resource envelope? The envelope is getting thinner and thinner. So how are we going to manage that, seeing that education is key to a better future and a better tomorrow? Thirdly, on the ECD allocations and performance, does the FFC believes that the 2024 appropriation bill includes adequate mechanism to address the challenges raised by the various provinces regarding ECD allocations and performances. We can throw money. ECD it's very important in childhood and where we start with our education, building our future. And last one from my side at this moment is just a question. I believe the government previously committed to exploring and implementing zero-based budgeting. And can the FFC, my question now, can the FFC provide an update on any progress made in this area? Honorable Chair Lady, I will park it there, and maybe there will be another question coming up. But thank you very much for this brilliant presentation. It's very clear, it's very simple, it's everyone to understand. Thank you, Chair Lady.
Thank you, Honorable Swartz. Honorable Brits.
Thank you, Honorable Chair. Yes, first of all, I want to echo my colleagues' words and thank the FFC for this presentation. It does provide practical help, and it is easy and understandable, and it is very logic and rational. Now, the matters that I want to address, on the one hand, is the white elephant in the room. And that white elephant is our increasing debt. National debt is increasing, and we spend more than what we earn. Now, any businessman will say, when you spend more than you earn, that is not sustainable, and you will get into trouble. Now, I can't find the exact figure. Maybe somebody can help me with that. First of all, what is South Africa's current debt? How much do we owe? And secondly, how much or what is the repayment per annum on this debt? So in other words, what does it cost us to service that debt? And thirdly, I want to know, maybe the FFC can help me or somebody else, I don't know. Thirdly, I want to know this debt repayment, the cost to service the debt in relation to this budget. How much, what is the percentage of the cost to service the debt? So that's the elephant in the room. It is very clear that debt is eating away a tremendous amount of our available budget. Then coming to some issues within the presentation, and I thank the FFC for that. There are certain albatrosses around the necks of taxpayers. The one that comes to mind is the SOEs. Now, I'm not going to state my view on the SOEs at this very moment, but is the FFC of the opinion that the SOEs in its current form are sustainable? And when it comes to turnaround strategies for the struggling SOEs, and I'm very generous with the expression that they are struggling. They are more than struggling. But does the FFC has a turnaround strategy to propose regarding SOEs? Thirdly, coming to the socioeconomic environment, when we look at the SRD, and I'm not trying to be insensitive, but how sustainable is the SRD, and is there are there any alternatives or proposed alternatives for the SRD? I would like to hear the FFC on that issue, what the proposals to this committee will be. I've noting that a couple of recommendations were made in the past by the FFC around the introduction of basic income grant to replace the SRD grant in its previous reports. Can we just get a feedback from the FFC? Did this happen? What came from the proposals in the past? My colleague mentioned the student funding model. I think for thousands of students in South Africa, our decisions regarding student funding and the models implemented is of concern and is very important to a lot of our students, and that has a bearing on the future of our leadership. The students of today will be the leaders of tomorrow. Just have a look around in Parliament, in this 7th Parliament, and you will note a lot of young faces. So it's very important that we invest in our future, in our youth, and especially in our students. So I would like to hear the FFC and the proposals in this regard. And Honourable Chair, I think at this very moment, that is the bunch of my questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, honourable members. I'm now going to hand over to FFC to respond to questions. But it is also important to remind members that FFC serves as one of the key strategic stakeholders. They are a constitutional body which makes recommendation to assist both Parliament through this committee and provincial legislatures. Yes, questions are asked. Some of the questions, in my view, are directed to specific sector departments, and maybe some of the questions that members asked today will be able to be answered when we go for our oversight in those particular departments. But I'm going to request FFC to respond to all the questions asked by members, and maybe I will take hands for follow-up questions, clarity-seeking questions, and maybe if you have a new question, you'll also be allowed as members to ask them. Over to you, Mr. Ngozo.
No, thank you, Chairperson, for the questions. We welcome the engagement from the honourable members. So I'll speak to some of the question from mainly the macro perspective, and then I will invite my colleagues to speak to those that are specific to the appropriation and others that require maybe specific responses that are different from the macro perspective. So, Chairperson, you mentioned how the budget is affecting the different sectors of the economy and the disparities thereof. So in our analysis, we were analyzing, budgets that go to the different votes in government, and if you go down to the sectoral analysis of it, it will mean then going to look deeper at the budget that goes to the Department of Trade and Industry and Competition, which is mainly the department that is responsible for industrialization and picking up sectors that are important for economic growth, and then looking at how those sectors are going to be supported. So that will be one way of looking at it. The fact that there were increases that were allocated to the Department of Trade and Industry tells you that government is looking seriously at how the different sectors of the economy can be supported by the budget. You also spoke about the national priorities and fiscal policy. You will know, Chairperson, that the main priorities, national priorities, and they have been they've been for a long time standing priorities are those that talk to unemployment, poverty, and inequality. And we continue to, as the government continues to prioritize these three areas because of the impact that they have on the general populace. So what has been our main challenge is that the economy has not been growing at a level that will begin to make meaningful impact on unemployment and poverty, and as well as inequality. So because of the slow growth, we have had a situation that whereby unemployment has been increasing, and to a certain extent poverty has also poverty levels have also been increasing because the economy has not been growing well. So that is what we can say in as far as national priorities and the budget is concerned. And unless we grow the economy, there is very likely that the fiscal policy can achieve in terms of addressing those key national priorities. Now, I also spoke about the alignment of the FFC recommendation to fiscal issues. And from where we sit as at FFC, we see that government is pursuing fiscal consolidation that is aimed at stabilizing, the public finances, so that then we can be in a position to do more in as far as addressing all the fiscal issues that we are confronting. Again, the problem there has been the economic growth, because economic growth has been very low, and there is a strong correlation between economic growth and revenue generation. So if the economy is growing, you have even companies that are prospering, and new companies that are being established, and as we all know, they provide a critical tax revenue to government, and in that way, then you are able to generate a lot of revenue, then you and be able to address all the fiscal issues that you are confronting as a country. So that has been the situation, and that has been our main challenge in terms of economic growth. We apologize for using the abbreviation without explaining it in full, the GFECRA, but it stands for Gold and Foreign Exchange Contingency Reserve Fund. What this is a fund or money that sits at the Reserve Bank. It belongs to the National Treasury, but it sits at the Reserve Bank for management purposes, because it is linked to the developments in as far as the exchange rate is concerned. So when the rand appreciates, it is drawn down. When it goes the other way, depreciate. In other words, it is able to generate the funds. That's how the funds are generated in the most simple form. And so the funds have been sitting at the Reserve Bank for quite a long time, and the rand has, in the main over the period has depreciated, which has meant that then it has generated a lot of these funds, and so a decision was taken then to use some of those funds to rescue the country from the fiscal challenges that is faced, mainly to take care or to manage the debt levels. So it was used to reduce our debt levels. So that's all that we're saying about the fund. But our main point was that we understand why the funds had to be accessed, so that we can manage the debt levels, because that's important even for investors to see that we are in charge of our debt situation, but to caution that the issue that we're facing, as I've already explained, has to do with the fact that we are not growing. We do not have a growing economy, and that's where we should start looking at what are the binding constraints to economic growth. How can we resolve those so that we can grow the economy, so that we can generate revenue, so that then we can be in a better fiscal position. So that's all there is to it, and I hope I've explained it sufficient. If not, then we can have another bite at it. The SOEs, issue of SOEs, the recommendation that the FFC made to government was that of forming a company that will be responsible for the SOEs. Our conceptual, the understanding or conceptualization of this particular company, and it happens in other countries. In our recommendation, we articulate how it works in other countries. Basically, a team of experts that understand the different sectors within which this also is operate, come together and form as part of the board of this company, and then they make decisions regarding turnaround strategies and how these companies should be run. And the way we envisaged it is that it is not a company that's supposed to depend on the fiscus for its operation. It's supposed to run its affairs and drive the SOE such that they are able to get a return to investment themselves, so that then they are able to sustain themselves. That is how we viewed it, and we thought that it would be better than SOEs being run by the Public Enterprises Ministry or department, because it will be run by people who have vested interest in the success of these enterprises, and ensuring that they generate the adequate profits in order to sustain themselves. So that was our thinking in as far as SOEs are. We agree that, and then as we articulated in interview, the SOEs are facing a lot of challenges that end up requiring fiscal intervention, and so to stop that, we need really to have this company established as quickly as possible, and to ensure that SOEs are then run from a single source and in a professional manner. The debt situation, indeed, we are in a very dire debt situation. We agree it needs to be resolved. Coming to the specifics of the debt levels, we usually express this in a percentage of GDP, so that because expressing it in monetary terms will require a convention of the debt, maybe, and expressing it in dollars, so that we can better appreciate the extent from an international perspective. But like you said, it's high at 74.1% of GDP. That's high for a. We must contextualize this, that actually, from where we're sitting, it's not really the magnitude of the debt that becomes important. It is the trajectory of the debt that becomes very important to us. So you have some other countries that have higher levels of GDP, but because it is clear how they are going to repay the debt, it does not become a problem, and it becomes manageable. In our case, the challenge is that as our economy continues to underperform, it then becomes less clear as to how we're going to repay this debt, because it all depends on growth. Without the growth, we will struggle to repay the debt. Just by way of illustration, for every rand that we generate in revenue, about 20 cents goes to repaying the debt. So that means that funds that should have been channeled to developmental challenges that the country is facing do not go there, but they go to the repayment of debt, and that then becomes a problem. Okay, let me deal lastly with the issue of SRD versus PIG. We understand that government is considering the establishment of the basic income grant, but in line with this, I think some research has been conducted to inform government on this, and government hasn't taken any decision with respect to that, and there are various ways of looking at it. Some people broadly argue that money that you allocate to basic income grants is not lost in the economy because of the multiplier effect, which simply means that it can be used to stimulate the economy. So it's not money that is going out of the economy. But another school of thought then doesn't see it that way, and they think that it has to be funded with the understanding that the fiscal policy as it is now is not in a position to stimulate the economy, because the multiplier effects anyway in the country are very low. In some extent, some studies have expressed that they are negative. Us as the FFC, we've also done a study on the multiplier effects for South Africa, and we found that they are very, very low, and that means then that whatever money that you spend on your fiscus it does not generate sufficient stimulus for the economy in order to contribute to economic growth. Chairperson, let me end here, and then I invite my colleague Sasha and my colleagues Sasha and Kuzo to come in and speak to some of the specific questions. Thank you.
Thanks, Tando. I think starting just with the chairperson's questions, and I think it's important to note that this bill tries to do a lot in a constrained resource envelope, and it tries to make allocations to those departments that are responsible for spurring on growth and development, while also trying to maintain your social protection program spending. So it's a very precarious balancing act. And what we find is that we make little bits of allocations everywhere. And when we assess these allocations against, perhaps what they, against plans and priorities of where we should be spending, we can say, yes, we did allocate to basic education, but, is that money within basic education going to where it should be going, where it's needed most? And I think just touching on the education-related questions from Honorable Sawita and Swart, I think there needs to be a sort of a strategic rethink of how we fund the education sector. We need to put more emphasis, I think this was pointed out by the member, on our early learning programs, building that strong foundation. We've seen currently ECD gets under 2% of the basic education budget, so it's minuscule. we've seen the consequence of that upside down prioritization. We've got 82% of learners in grade 4 that cannot read for meaning. So we need to rethink how we fund the education sector. We need to put the emphasis on building that strong foundation so that we see learners progressing through the various stages from your primary to secondary to higher education without all those high dropout rates. So there needs to be a rethink of that, and within within that type of reformed way of looking at education, we need to think about how do we then fund higher education, which we know the costs there are significant. So as a first step, we need that sort of rethink. Then the question with respect to agriculture and small scale farmers, what happens to their products? Honorable Sewisa, we did recently complete some analysis on agriculture and looking specifically at smallholder farmers. Within the existing sort of resource envelope, if we look at what provinces spend on agriculture, it averages under 2% per annum. It averages under 2% of total resources that provinces have at their disposal. So it's quite limited. And then you have your grants like your CASP, Elima Letsema, and others that put emphasis on your smallholder farmers. But for example, the analysis that we did, we looked at the CASP spending, which is just over R1 billion. But when you look at the number of beneficiaries and what the average spend per beneficiary is, it's very low. It's not enough to help those farmers become sustainable. So part of what we do recommend as a result of the analysis we did is that this issue of access to markets is a very big challenge. And what we recommend is that perhaps it's time to consider public procurement from smallholder farmers. And that provincial departments actually help in capacitating those farmers to become part of the supply chain, the supply chains in various products, so that they do also, start operating sustainably. With respect to water and sanitation, so some functions are exclusive, which means that they are the domain of one particular department or sphere, whereas others are concurrent or shared across different spheres. So when we look at water, we see that it's a shared function, it's a concurrent function, and generally where a function is shared, you'd have the national department looking at setting legislation, norms and standards, regulations, etc., and the subnational government responsible for actual service delivery. So if we look at Schedule 4B of the Constitution, which relates to local government, it says that local government is responsible for stormwater management systems in built-up areas, and it's also responsible for water and sanitation services limited to potable water supply systems and domestic wastewater and sewage disposal systems. So that delivery component, your municipalities are accountable for. Then with respect to the efficiencies, we endorse the increases, but note concerns around efficiency, what can be done. I think that was Honorable Swart. We think that we need to use the funds to ensure that increased allocations are not going to your non-core, non-service delivery admin type programs. It needs to go to those programs that ensure that we have warm bodies on the ground that can help fight crime and keep people safe. We also need to work smartly and leverage existing technology. So looking at the standardization of using electronic systems for registering cases, for record keeping, for report writing, and work in a coordinated fashion. So within the safety and security cluster, the police shouldn't work in isolation. There needs to be a strong coordination with the other arms in that cluster. Yeah, I think Tando answered the question on the SRD grant, but agreeing with the member that the present way in which we approach this SRD, it's not sustainable. It places significant burden on the fiscus. Just for 2024, an addition of 33 billion had to be made in order to extend that SRD up until next year. So whatever does replace it needs to be fiscally sustainable. Thank you, Chair. I'm not sure if Kutso would like to come in.
Well, thanks, Sasha. I think you and Tando have covered the questions extensively. So thanks. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, colleagues. Members, is there a follow-up question? I see Honorable Brett has raised his hand. Any other member who would like to make a follow-up or have a clarity-seeking question? Honorable Siwisa. In that order, Honorable Brett, over to you.
Thank you, Honorable Chairperson. I've just one issue that I want to cover. Mention was made of the economic growth rate and the impact that has on our fiscus. Now, I note that the Reserve Bank predicted a growth rate of around about 1.2% for this year and around about 1.6% for the next year. In a newspaper article this morning, I noted that the IMF, on the other hand, expects a growth rate of 0.9% for this year and 1.2% for the next, based on the possible inflation increases. Now, it is clear that we, as we've heard, that we sit with an underperforming economy. I would like clarity, does the FFC agree with the growth rate of between 0.9 to 1.2%? Or does it predict a lower growth rate? Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Chairperson, I'm a bit concerned, and it's not a question per se, but it's going to be more of a comment. In one of the recommendations that are done by the FFCs, that the Commission recommends a comprehensive economic growth strategy to surmount these obstacles to discover the prospects of growth, and specifically coming to industrialization, which is one of the issues that South Africa needs to look into, that we need to seriously consider industrialization in South Africa because of the poor economic growth in the country itself. But in the same sitting that we are in, or the same briefing that we are in, then there are talks about basic income grant. And then we go to the borrowing and the debt of South Africa, that South Africa does not have money. So there's going to be an introduction of a basic income grant instead of creation of jobs. We are going to make sure that South Africans are still dependent on government instead of giving them jobs, creating jobs via industrialization. This is just a comment, Chair. Number two, another comment which is also a concern. So state-owned entities fell under public enterprises which failed dismally. Now we are going to introduce a company that we are being told that the company is not going to get any. I stand to be corrected. There's nothing that the company is going to receive from government to make sure that our state entities are working. So in short, we are basically saying government does not believe in itself. They would rather go and find somebody else to come and do their own job. This is where we are, Chairperson, at this moment. SOEs failed dismally for the past so many years. Now, instead of making sure that they become independent again, now we are going private. And the question that comes to mind is to say, this private company that the FFC is making a recommendation that it must be established, to who are they going to account? Because they need to come and tell us the progress. This is how far we are with the state-owned entities. This is the progress that we've made, and these are the other things that we need to do. But the catch in this whole thing is there's no one that is going to work without getting any incentives. So what is the catch of forming a company that is not going to receive any incentives from government to make sure that state-owned entities are going to be functional? So if there's a possibility of getting a response, then I'll get the response. But if it's not, there's no response to say what is the catch. What are the benefits that this company is going to get? Because honestly speaking, me, myself, I can never go and work for free for a company that brings in money and then I'm going to work free of charge. There must be something. There must be the written agreements. So what are the terms and conditions? If, let's say, the FFC does get it right and government does approve that this company must be established to take care of the state-owned entities, what is the catch? Who in their own right mind is going to work for free? Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Honorable Siwisa. Honorable Ngumalo.
No, thank you very much, Chairperson. My humble greetings to you and also to the members that are connected. Let me thank the presentation made before us here, which talks to the appropriation. Chairperson, in terms of our poor economic growth, so to say, or maybe let me say yesterday, our presentation by Honorable who is Minister for COPTA and also Minister for Water Services, Honorable Majodin. So I was listening tentatively to them. They were saying water is life and also sanitation. That's the issues that they've presented to us yesterday, which is good. And I welcome those reports. Chairperson, in terms of our poor economic growth in the country.
Ngumalo,
yes.
I see you are struggling with your network. You can just close the video and continue talking for better connectivity.
Okay. Thank you very much, Chair. Am I audible now?
Yes, you are.
Okay, thank you very much, Chair. In terms of the economic growth of our country, which is very much poor, as stated, Chair, I think we must look at the issue of agriculture. I am from a rural where our economic pillar is agriculture and also tourism. 10%, if ever we can get more effort to make sure that our commercial farmers are being assisted, I think we can be able to curb the issue of high unemployment, especially to our young people. Because in essence, most of our young people are not employed, not working, so to say. 10%, you have touched the issue of education, the allocation for education. Chair, we must look at the issue of ECD. I concur with what you are saying to say make sure that we put more effort on the issue of foundation phase. They normally call it a foundation phase, because whenever you build something, you must make sure that the foundation is strong so that it can be able to be strong throughout the year. So if ever more effort can be given to our ECD, it will assist us not to look at someone who is in matric. They've also mentioned the issue of kids who are at grade 4 and unable to read, which is a shame. We must make sure that we put more effort in the issue of our ECD centers, Chairperson. The other issue is the issue of, as we are in the NCOP, to strengthen our political oversight. I think somehow it's not that strong, because really whenever you hear ministers saying something from the rural community where we come from, it's a bit lower than what they are saying here. So it means that we must make sure that we strengthen ourselves. It's just a comment, Chair. On the issue of debt, I'm covered. One honorable member was saying in terms of the debt of the country, because really we are hearing every day that we are in debt. But we don't know in terms of monetary to say how deep is that those debt to our country. So, but in short, Chairperson, I want to say that the presentation it's understandable. Chairperson, it just needs us to make sure that we do oversight thoroughly to all the department and all the provinces as stated. Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you, Honorable Numalo. Honorable Swart.
Thank you, Honorable Chair Lady. Chair Lady, I asked also at the beginning of yesterday's presentation and listening also today and listening to the honorable members, you know, how many from young people, new ideas, innovative ideas. What is also today, is there, Chair Lady, that we can organize just a workshop for us as committee, and we can ask Shasha or Tandu Kule to come and sit, you know, to strengthen our role in our oversight role as political oversight role, where we can assist through our oversight role also to come up and discuss new ideas going forward with our country in developing and empowering our people in South Africa. The one question, I don't know, Chair Lady, somebody or you can tell me I'm out of order, but just for me, I just want to, you know, we're struggling with income streams, more revenue income, more sources of income. Now, given the significant number of illegal businesses operating in our country that neither contribute to government revenue nor employ South African residents, what measures is government considering to address the issue of and ensure compliance with tax and labor laws to generate more revenue and protect local employment? You know, I was a mayor before I entered the NCOP buildings. You'll find businesses, there is a lot of people with documents, but you will find business all over. You hand over today a house to a poor people that didn't have a house for how many years? Tomorrow, the people is renting it out just to get an income. But it's not only small corner business anymore that people, that's all the 7-Elevens in South Africa. You will find the people all over and they're not paying a cent. Maybe under correction, but that is just, you know, what are we going to put in place? Because this is a growing industry in South. I know people that's in South Africa. It's not only shops. It's what you call it now. There's people buying motorbikes or scooter bikes. They're doing delivery services for bigger shops, hairdressing business all over, and they're not contributing to our government revenue. It's just a question from my side. Thank you, Chair Lady. And I'm serious about, a training session, Chair Lady, maybe for us as committee to strengthen our oversight. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Honorable Swart. And maybe to remind you that on the 31st of July, we'll be having an induction of members of the Select Committee. Maybe the issues that you've just raised, Mr. Lubabalo and Ms. Grunewald, are on the platform. They can see how they slot in issues that you've raised for the day of the induction so that they can be covered. I will give to Mr. Ngozo to respond to the follow-up questions and maybe make a submission on the issues that were raised, not as questions, but submissions from Honorable Siweya. Thank you very much. Over to you, Mr. Ngozo.
Thank you, Chair, again for the opportunity. So, Honorable Brits, the growth projections, they are done by various institutions, like you correctly pointed out. The IMF released its quarterly world, economic projections yesterday, and indeed they see South African economy growing at I think 0.9% for this year, and then improving slightly to I think 1.2 in 2025. And the Reserve Bank usually when they update us, when the MPC, the Monetary Policy Committee meets to look at the interest rate, they usually update their projection as well. National Treasury during budget time, they also express or state their projection. So these various institutions do this by making a lot of assumptions, and so whether the projections are realized or not, really, in most instances, it depends on the projections that they have made, in the assumptions, that they've made. So if they don't materialize, then it means then the projections also are off the mark. We do not necessarily endorse any of them as FFC, because in order for us to do that, we have to run our own models and have our own assumptions on growth, which currently we do not do. But the major point and the thing that we agree on is that the growth level is very, very low. The economy is underperforming. The growth rates, by the way, they usually, in most instances, they are not far off from each other. So if you talk, whether you talk about 0.9% or we talk about 1.2%, those are very low levels to make any meaningful impact on the challenges that we are facing. So that's all that we can say on the growth projections. On Honorable Siwis, we hear you on big the basic income grant versus the creation of jobs. It depends how you look at it, because in any economy, you'll always have your vulnerable group that you have to protect. So social protection becomes important and part of fiscal policy in that regard, which then speaks to the need for a basic income grant. But the creation of it doesn't substitute the creation of jobs. By the way, you can pursue both in ensuring that there is stability in the economy. Because if you don't have your social protection in place, you might have difficulties when it comes to your social environment that might lead to instability. That's all we can say there. And the SOE's company, like we say, that's how we conceptualize it as the FFC, and that's what we recommended. We will hear from government what how eventually this company will look like. But what I said earlier on was just our conceptual decision as FFC. And looking at the international best practice. What has happened in other countries is that this company will derive they will share the profits with this SOEs as they generate their profits. There'll be an agreement in place as to how much will go to them for the efforts that for their efforts in ensuring that these companies are profitable. I think Honorable Ngumalo, mainly it was comments, and Honorable Swart on the illegal business operations, I think by foreign nationals, if I'm not mistaken. I think what becomes important for us is to empower the South African Revenue Services to increase tax compliance. They need resources to go after all businesses that are operating, ensuring that there is tax compliance with those. But then if it's there is an illegal component, then and it also relates to foreigners, then it becomes the issue of law enforcement and also that of Home Affairs. But basically, from a fiscal perspective, what's important for us is that SARS is empowered to collect as much tax as they can, and they need the resources to do that. So, which is why when the budget allocates more resources to SARS, we see that as a positive, because we see it translating into more revenue that comes in. Thank you, Chair. I don't know if my colleagues will want to come in and add on
that. Thanks, Tanda. I think you've addressed that second round of questions. I don't have anything to add. Thank you.
Anything from your side, Mr. Makua? Mr. Makua? Seems as if from the FFC, all questions have been duly responded to. I only want to check with members whether they are satisfied with the questions before I close the item on the briefing. Any members? I see Honorable Swart is sorted. Honorable Ngumalo sorted. All members on the platform are sorted. Colleagues, let me take this opportunity once again to thank all of you for having been here. But before I close, let's send our condolences to the family of the chairperson of the FFC. She will forever be put in prayers during this difficult time, and may the soul of the departed rest in peace. Honorable members, if you remember, yesterday, the 16th of July, the committee had a briefing by the National Treasury on the bill, where several critical issues were raised. Today, I wish to thank the FFC for taking their time to make an input before this committee. Critical issues such as access to quality, drinkable water, issues to education, the student funding model and healthcare services, SRD grant, as well as funding for various sectors of government departments were interrogated. Issues around slow economic growth and The impact of SOEs remains a challenge, as it was raised by members, and it doesn't assist government to push back the frontiers of poverty, inequality, and unemployment in our society. The committee is going to consider these inputs to strengthen its deliberations and recommendations for this process. Furthermore, I would like to thank members of the committee for their contributions and constructive participation, and for raising very critical issues which enables us to put together a quality report of this select committee. Having said that, I would like to give this opportunity to either Ms. Groenewald or Mr. Nodada to bring up anything that may be left out for this meeting as per the agenda item, to make announcements before we close the meeting. Thank you very much. Ms. Groenewald or Mr. Nodada.
Chairperson, thank you very much for this opportunity, Chair. Chair, the only announcement that we have is just a reminder that next week the committee will be briefed by the PPO on the appropriation bill. The date will be the 23rd of July, and the following day, on the 24th, the committee will conduct public hearings on the bill, Chair. But all necessary documents, including notices, will be sent in due course, Chairperson. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Nodada. And I'm going to request that all the presentations that will be given to members in the upcoming meetings, let them reach the members at least 48 hours before each and every sitting of this committee. Members, thank you very much for being in the meeting. Thank you very much to all the colleagues from FFC and to the staff of the committee. This brings us to the end of our meeting. Thank you very much and enjoy the rest of your day. See you again next week, Tuesday.
Thank
Bye.
you, Honorable Chair.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Chair.